Hello again, everybody. Happy New Year. It's another edition of the Gridiron Review 2018. Time to get things underway. We had youth football this past weekend. Coming up this weekend, we've got the high schools, the pros, of course, right around the corner. And one of us will be going to Hawaii this week to watch Navy and Hawaii. Unfortunately, the game kicks off at 11 Eastern time, so really no need for Wags to go. But you can watch it on TV. You can stay up late, have a couple of cocktails and a little salad, a little burger. You know, watch the game, late night football, nothing like it. Look, high school storylines already for this year. Let's start out first with one of the great legends, and Chuck Markowitz, who, you know, between his time at, start all the way back at Meade and what he did to get the football program at North County going forward and eventually winning it all there, and obviously what he's done at Arundel High School. I can't even imagine. I mean, it's got to be in the thousands, the number of kids that Chuck has influenced through the years. And I'm not sure you can really, for that stipend that you get for being a high school coach, it's nowhere near the value of what Chuck Markowitz did, I think, for the lives of thousands of kids in Anne Arundel County.
Right, well, absolutely ranks as one of the legends in Anne Arundel County football history, right up there with Al Larimore from Annapolis High, Jerry Mears from Arundel and Meade. Chuck is the winningest coach in the history of Anne Arundel County. I covered games when he was the head coach at Meade. I covered him when he was at North County and led them to a state championship. And then, of course, at Arundel, a ton of success. So, Chuck, you never knew when he was. I always ask Chuck every year, when are you going to give it up? I don't know. I'm still enjoying it. As long as I enjoy coaching, I'm going to keep doing it. But this offseason, he decided it was time. But he's not done coaching. He's gone over to Archbishop Spalding. He is the offensive line coach at Spalding. I just think that he felt it was the time to turn it over to someone else at Arundel. He had a very, very loyal staff at Arundel of guys that have been with him a long time, and I think he just felt like it was time to give one of those other fellows a chance to be a head coach. And also, from his own standpoint, by not being a head coach, less responsibility. Now at Spalding, he just shows up. He doesn't have to run the whole show. He shows up to practice and coaches, shows up to games, and he can spend a little more quality time with his wife because they are both retired from the school system. But congratulations to Chuck. Great run as a high school football coach. And Jack Walsh, who was he played for Chuck at North County. He coached with him at Arundel the entire time. Jack Walsh is now the head coach at Arundel, and he's maintained the core of the staff that has always been there. Dave Doy is the offensive coordinator, has been so for years under Markowitz. So Arundel will keep going. It'll be interesting to see how Arundel evolves and develops. Does Jack stick with the run and shoot that Chuck had employed for all those years? It'll be interesting. They only have one returning starter on offense at Arundel High, and that's the center.
It's a good guy to build the blocks with, but also what's going to be interesting to watch at Arundel too is when the new Crofton High School gets built. It's going to be interesting to see what the zoning looks like and which kids will be going to the new Crofton, which ones will be going out to Arundel, the ones from South River that are going to be coming back to the Crofton area. That'll eventually will affect the high school football scene. Look, on the field, Ethan Williams going to Boston College highlights what Broadneck is doing. So they've got a good core of people coming back in terms of the public school schedule. But as we know, early in the season, we'll find out what Old Mill's all about because they've got the early test with North Point. Love Chad McCormick going out there and challenging his guys with a good out-of-conference opponent. And because now, the smaller schools in the county don't have to play all the 4As. These types of spots have opened up. Great chance here to see a great ball game early in the year between Old Mill and North Point. Kind of like it was in the old days, Bill, where we'd see some of these teams venture out of the county and play a good opponent.
Well, when Chuck Markowitz was at North County High School, he knew if he was going to win a state championship, he probably had to go through PG County. And there was always the problem with PG County had more speed overall. So Chuck always scheduled a PG County school, a good one like Parkdale or somebody, first in that 1 week that he could get an out-of-county opponent. So I like this, and I give Chad McCormick a lot of credit. Last year, North Point laid it on Old Mill in the opener, and that came back to cost Old Mill down the road when it came playoff time. Like Chad McCormick was talking to Bob Hoke, our high school sports editor, for the preview, and he said most schools would not be talking about a 7-3 season having to bounce back.
Right.
But at Old Mill, they're not accustomed to losing 3 games in 1 year. So they consider this a bit of a bounce back rebuilding year. They got Raheem Tall, the great tailback who really emerged last year and put up some big numbers that people are talking about already. He might be the best running back in the county. But I give Chad a lot of credit for scheduling North Point in that opener despite what happened last year. And then Broadneck, you mentioned, they went farther than anyone last year. They advanced to the state semifinals, did not go well, suffered a pretty bad loss. They have a lot of returning talent. Jason Carcamo is their standout tailback. Ethan Williams going to Boston College, a big-time playmaking wide receiver. And interesting there is that it looks as though the starting quarterback at Broadneck is going to be a freshman, Josh Ehrlich. You may remember Governor Ehrlich, Bob Ehrlich. That's his son. And looking like a freshman is going to start a quarterback.
If you've watched him in youth league at all growing up,
good player.
Good player.
Right.
So, and you know Rob Harris isn't just going to turn it over to him unless he feels he is ready to handle this at this level. A lot of great private school storylines. A really big year from St. Mary's last year. A program that had seen some flashes and some lights, but consistency and leadership had really been challenged there. But they finally got over the hump last year. AACS and Severn right out of the gate. Severn had a nice bounce back season a year ago as well. Great to see all of this football across the board really being as successful as it is, because we know all the private schools are all reaching for the same kids, and they're all, from Spalding on down, playing pretty successful football.
Right. Well, Jason Bedroni has brought some stability to St. Mary's High football, has done a really good job, and last year they won the MIAA B Conference Championship, beat Severn in a rematch of the regular season for the championship. So they now, St. Mary's suffered big losses. That was a senior-laden team. So it'll be interesting to see if they can remain atop the B Conference. I think Severn is going to be good again. Head coach Dwayne Tyler is in his second year, and he's got some good talent coming back. We talked on this show last year about Henry Rent. He's back at quarterback, and they got some other fine athletes returning, so Severn's going to be good. That'll be a great test early, Annapolis Area Christian School versus Severn right off the bat. And obviously, Coach Mike Lynn at AACS led them to C Conference Championship. And I kind of predicted they would move up to the B Conference. And so it's interesting what's going to happen among that level. But at Spalding, we got a unique storyline, which has been in the papers all summer. St. Francis Academy, which has kind of become a national level program. They're recruiting players from all over the East Coast, really. They caused a bit of a stir this year. Some MIAA A Conference schools announced they would not play St. Francis Academy this year. It started with Mount St. Joseph, then McDonough got on board and Calvert Hall, and Spalding never made the decision not to play St. Francis. But after this all became a hullabaloo, a big deal, St. Francis and Spalding mutually agreed not to play their scheduled game, so that St. Francis is now going to pursue a national schedule. Now that it was determined that they don't really have any games in the MIAA A Conference anymore, they decided to go full bore with a national schedule. So Spalding and St. Francis mutually agreed not to play. And so St. Francis has already been declared the MIAA A Conference champion by virtue of, in essence, forfeits. So it's going to be a really interesting year in the MIAA A Conference. But Spalding is right there with Mount St. Joseph, Gilman, Calvert Hall, McDonough. Spalding is every bit as capable of any team of being the best team in the MIAA. I know that you can't be a champion this year. It's already been awarded. Jaden Umbarger will be the starting quarterback at Spalding. He's a Navy commit, third former Spalding quarterback to commit to Navy, following in the footsteps of Zach Abey and Evan Falkman. And now Jaden Umbarger is heading to Navy, and he looks to have a big season, big senior year at Spalding.
All right, coming up, we will talk about the mids who head to Hawaii. We'll tell you what positions Zach Abey and Evan Falkman are playing. Ironically, neither playing quarterback, at least at the start of this year. We'll tell you why. Maryland, of course, with its offseason turmoil, they open up with Texas coming up this week. The Ravens and the Redskins wrap up the preseason with each other. All that coming up next on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back. Time to talk youth football in our AAYFA segment. This past week, the opening week of the youth football season, and hundreds of youngsters all across the county, plenty of volunteers. They all wait for that schedule. Jason Clark, president of the AAYFA, they bug you, they bug me, they bug Jeff Porter. When's the schedule coming out? When's the schedule coming out? Well, it came out, and look, you couldn't have asked for better weather on Saturday. Correct. I know the bump between Old Mill and Brooklyn Park going up the road here, right around the corner from where we are, was stellar.
Yes.
Thoughts on what you all got from the opening weekend?
Well, probably the biggest thing going into this season is that we eliminated a third league. So we now have two leagues, an American and the Central. And I believe it raised the level of competition across the board. This opening weekend, I don't think we could have asked for a better one. A lot of great games, good rivalries. It seemed like, whoever the scheduler was, thank them, because you had a lot of
Jeff Porter.
He's actually getting a lot of credit because you had defending, championships rematches, and I happened to be involved in one of those. And the atmosphere at Brooklyn Park is probably the best I've been involved in probably every bit about 10 years. Just the excitement, the crowd, the number of people that came out to support. It was, deafening for a little, 9-year-old football game where you had a hard time yelling your plays in to get the quarterback and your defenders to actually hear what you were saying. So, if this is an indication of how great the season is going to be, I'm all for it. I think we did a good job.
But isn't that what we're hoping for every week at every location on Saturday or Sunday, even the few smattering of Friday night games? Isn't that really, though, the kind of enthusiasm that we're looking for?
Absolutely. It was, it was refreshing to see that because, you go all off season and you're trying to, fix this to kind of grow the sport and get everybody more involved and coming out and support these kids. And you open up the weekend just like that. It was a heated rival. There was a lot of jaw jacking and going on with it. But at the end of the day, everybody remembered what they were there for and would support the kids. And you could see it coming off the field with the winners we celebrating, and then they were patting up the team that lost. It was excellent. And I hope that we're on to a good thing now.
Even our boy Mark Avery came away with a good weekend as well, with much respect as always. Look, we've had, you've been involved in this in some capacity for 20 years. And a lot of the other guys that have been mainstays on the executive board through the years, and other volunteers like, Chris Sexton, Marvin Alsop for years, have all been involved. Why stay involved for so long?
That's a good question. Just a little history. I only got involved because Ed and Mike Clay contacted me and said, hey, we're starting an organization. Are you able to help out? And I said, yeah, I was still in the service at the time. I said, I'll give you a couple hours a week that I could. And I got involved, and I just couldn't stop. The simple fact that you're coming out and you're helping this kid, no chances, but most of them aren't going to make it to the NFL. We know that. However, it's the opportunity that you're playing a positive role model in this individual's life. And some of the kids that I've coached over the years, I'll get a phone call or an email or something to just say, Coach, I appreciate what you've done. And so I see it now, because now some of the guys that I coach have kids that are now coming up through the league, and they'll remind you of certain things that you may have said that we have forgotten over the years. But the most important thing is that it provides a nice avenue for some of these kids to get away from what they're normally into and learn how to be, I like to say, positive role models.
Well, let's face it. In every community, there are some kids that need that. They need those positive role models. And I think, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that there are hundreds of volunteers between coaches, team moms, people who help, get the fields ready for a weekend of action. I think sometimes we tend to forget that those people, are not compensated. Maybe they get a free hot dog at the concession stand at the end of the game, maybe a free beverage or something like that. But I think sometimes, the parental units behind the ropes or up in the stands if we're playing on turf sometimes forget that those people are volunteers. And, how do we kind of bridge the gap where the parent that is up in the stands, you're up there because you've chosen to be up there. Mm-hmm. You're more than welcome if you can pass a background check to come on the other side of the rope and help out. That door is always open. How do we get those folks to leave the folks who are trying to do that job on the other side of the rope just to leave them alone and allow the game to be itself sometimes on a Saturday. Because you, like I said, you've been doing this a long
Right.
time. I've been doing it a long
Right.
time. I beg every year to have an ejection-free season. I tell them, does Ken Niumatalolo get thrown out of a game? No. Does Nick Saban get thrown out of a game? No.
Right.
Does John Harbaugh get thrown out of a game?
Right.
No. But yet we have youth football coaches that get thrown out, or we have parents that get thrown out. How do we bring those two together to realize that it is just youth football and there's a line, and you got to know where that line is?
This is something that we talk about all the time as far as, my coaching peers. And the realization is that it is youth football. I know we kind of touched on this before, but once you leave youth football and you go to high school, that coach doesn't care how many times that you won a championship in the AAYFA. He doesn't care that you played, you were the best running back here. And parents can influence youth football.
Sure.
That stops pretty much when you go to high school. And if it doesn't stop, that's where you see all the transfers and all the other good things. And, going through a high school recruiting process for my son to go to college, not once did we bring up youth. He explained that the only reason why he was there is because he knows he can play football. I want to know what else you do. What other sports you know? How are you in your community? What do you help it? And somehow or another, that message has been lost to the parents, because if your kid doesn't get X amount of touches, then there's a problem. Or, he's not playing the position that you feel that he's going to be recognized at. And we're trying to educate the viewing public that youth football is all about experience. It's basically get out there, have fun, start learning the game, because when you get to high school, it's a different ball game. And then if you're fortunate enough to go on to play in college, it's completely different.
I was going to say, your son just committed to go play college ball. And in fact, both of my boys, one played D3 in basketball, the other one played Division I in basketball. He didn't play AAU ball until between his 10th and 11th grade year. So, you've got all these people that, we get caught up so much in you got to play A-level argument, the 9 and under, and 10 and under level. When you go out and watch some of those younger games, you can tell the 5 or 6 really good kids on each team, they play at a different level.
Yes.
You don't need necessarily to show them as much. It's the other 12 or 14 kids that fill out your roster that are really the reason you have a team, because you got to have 15.
Yep.
You got to have a minimum. Those are the kids, I think, sometimes that get a little left behind. And that's why we do have the minimum play rule, which has come up as a hot topic early in the season.
Yep.
And maybe that's something as commissioners, and again, people, you can go to your commissioner. You don't just arbitrarily call the county. If you have something, go to your commissioner first. Your commissioner's got the right hotline. He can get right in. If you've got a concern, let your commissioner, speak to that. And I don't know if it's something maybe we have to re-examine, that in the American level, maybe we do need to drop it from 10 plays down to 8, because we know time runs in a lot of these games. And we don't. And I think the biggest thing, we don't want to take the competitive edge away from people, because we do need to teach kids how to compete.
Absolutely.
Because to get anywhere in life, they've got to compete doing something, whether it's athletically or in a job world. But at some point, maybe we do have to look down the road, especially at the American level, where it is a little bit more competitive. Maybe we do need to talk about the minimum play level, but there are ways to do that.
Well, going into this weekend, I was talking with someone, and we're kind of comparing eras as far as youth football's changed in this county. At the lower weight classes, football has improved. The level play is unreal. I mean, some of these plays that these kids are executing, and you take a look at the play rule forced coaches into a box. And so now all of a sudden you used to have rosters of 22, 23 kids, and maybe, I can't remember what it was, but maybe it was 4 players or something like that. And there wasn't as much pressure to get that kid in with the now you come against the rest, the roster down to say 16, 17 kids, and you're asking each one to 10 plays, and so you're doing favors because the parent doesn't want their kid to be coached by certain people, or they want the level of coaching.
Sure.
So I'm gonna do my best to get them in. So it is time, in my opinion, to review the play rule. The Central League, the way the rules are written, are perfect for kids that aren't quite ready for or don't want that level of competition. But there definitely has to be some sort of separation.
I
Because
mean, I know at weigh-ins, I know one of the General's Highway teams that I had down at South River, that when they came to check in, they had a roster of 32 kids, which means, A, they got to get a waiver because the maximum is 30,
30,
because
yep.
you don't want to turn away any kids. But, and the coach even said, I got 11 that play offense, and I got a different 11 that play defense, and that's still 10 more kids that somehow they've got to find a way. Now, granted, you can't divide. Everybody says, well, 60, you could divide that 16 and 16, but we all know realistically some kids get hurt, some kids don't show up.
Yep.
Then you got a team that's out there playing with less than 11 people. We know
Right.
that's not ideal either.
Right.
So, I think you're right. The Central is definitely in place for kids that need the instructional part of it.
Correct.
At some point, look, we're going to have 13th High School when the new Crofton school
Right.
comes aboard. At some point, maybe even we need to look into consolidation of sorts, because so many organizations try hard. They don't necessarily get all the weight classes.
Right.
But if we had a little bit more semblance of consolidation, almost based on the way your feeders are, you may have a system in place where you can have the hyper-competitive level like we see in lacrosse and
Correct.
everything else, where there's
Correct.
travel,
Yep.
base type rules and stuff. And then we can have that other level where the kids who need the more instructional time, the only way they're going to learn is by playing,
Exactly.
and they need to be at the central level playing as opposed to riding the pine
Correct.
on an American team and really only playing 2 or 3 plays a game, because you don't really learn anything playing 2 or 3 plays a
No,
game.
you don't. No, and
You know that.
and it's unfortunate, but because of how football changed to be so competitive, that's what we end up with. So now, hopefully that with the 2 divisions now, we're going to start seeing maybe a better change as far as getting the kids the necessary experience to play. Because, like you said, sitting there playing 2, 3 plays in an American game isn't exact fun for the kid. But
You're a sports parent. I'm a sports parent. In fact, now we've got some PSAC allegiances because your kid's playing football in the
Right.
PSAC. My kid's coaching basketball in the PSAC. But as a parent, you've seen your kid play football all the way up through
Correct.
to the college level. So many parents out there worried about the safety of the game. How much of it right now is about educating parents about the game and not just the headlines of the danger and the fear that we see about the game right now? How important is that education for parents to really educate themselves? Because as we know, a team sport is still extremely rewarding for all the kids.
I think that's key, is that the material needs to be put out there, and the parent needs to do his own research, because if you just read the headlines, it scares you to death. It really does.
Sure.
But one of the things that I learned when I went on my son's recruiting trip was the colleges are even under more restrictions than we are.
Absolutely.
And I mean, granted, the thing in Maryland took place, but at the end of the day, their restraints, their hours that they're allowed to practice.
It might stun some AAYFA coaches who would practice 5 days a week, 5 hours a night if they were allowed to.
It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it when I started listening to it, because I'm thinking, here we have contact rules in the AAYFA, and then you hear the contact rules in college. My son plays quarterback. It's basically a crime to touch him.
Yeah.
During practice. But down in here, it's like, hey, you got to get suck that up and get back in the huddle, where that's the way the game is going to. And we don't see that. All we know is we get up in the morning and we'll go, watch ESPN or something and then go practice. But it's so much rules and regulations that we're not aware of. And the best thing we can do is continue to try to bring that to the forefront, and just let parents understand that it is a safe game, but there's always that risk. And it's no different than walking out and playing lacrosse, but football is the target.
You can speak to it as much as anybody, and I'll let you out on this. Your kid's a product of the AAYFA
Correct.
system growing up, and now he's playing football in college. Inside, what kind of pride is inside to see how much that structure aided him in accomplishing the goals that obviously he's trying to complete.
As far as my son's concerned, I think I was pretty blessed to have him with some great coaches. Navy guy, Ed Martin. He played for him. He played for Demetrius Ballard, and both of those guys put a lot of core values into him as far as leadership and understanding and teaching him the game. And then when we went on to high school, he had a little adversity, but he was strong enough to make a decision that said, Dad, that's not where I need to be for what I want to do. So we allowed him to move and make a change, and worked out for the best. But I'll stand toe to toe with anybody and say that we got some of the best football in the state, if not the best league. We've got I don't know if you guys remember DJ Brown that's playing at he was All-American that played at Gork, and now he's at Notre Dame. But the level of competition and the coaching that goes in our league I feel is like the best. And I've talked to other people, and I could be in stands at different games and start hearing people try to say that the AAYFA, because we don't have unlimited from top to bottom, but then the first thing is say, no, well, you guys give us great games because we're coached up. We don't. I get the unlimited thing, but at the same time, it's more about techniques and fundamentals. And a lot of our coaches do spend a lot of time on the fundamentals. So I said that to say this: if I was a do-over, he would play right here again, because I'm very confident that the level of play and the teaching that goes on in the AAYFA is the best.
All right.
Bar none.
He's the president of the AAYFA. He's been involved with it for 20 years.
Yep.
And look, I mean, seriously, to you and the countless volunteers who do the yeoman's work that nobody sees, especially on that executive board, appreciate all the time you guys put in. And let's hope weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and for some 9, and then some of the playoffs go just like week 1. And some of those, maybe those Old Mill Brooklyn Park rematches.
No, I don't need to see Brooklyn Park anytime soon. Mark Avery called me and predicted a win, and he got it. So.
Yeah, and he'll let you know about it on the message board as well. That's Jason Clark. He's the president of the AAYFA. Bill and I will come back, take a look at this week's college slate coming up in a moment. This is the Gridiron Review. Welcome back. As we talked about earlier, Spalding players on the team at Navy. Zach Abey, after nearly a record-setting, only Napoleon McCallum had run for more yards in a season for a Navy midshipman. He is now going to start at wide receiver. Evan Fachman moves to outside linebacker for the Mids. Quite a testament, Bill, to the athleticism that I know Bob Hoke and the other Capital High School sports writers wrote an awful lot about these two when they were at Spalding. Now we're going to get a true indication of that as they have moved out to different positions. Yeah,
it is unique, and both Zach Abey and Evan Fachman are former Capital Gazette newspapers Players of the Year. Jim Rhodes Memorial Trophy winner from the Touchdown Club of Annapolis. Each of them captured that prestigious award. But that's what Navy does. They recruit athletes, especially at the quarterback position. They want guys that if they do not make it as a quarterback are capable of helping somewhere else. And this is a perfect example. Zach Abey has done a tremendous job of accepting this change. As you mentioned, here's a guy that put up the second best single season rushing total in Navy history. The year after Nat McCallum did it, he was promoted for the Heisman Trophy. Zach Abey does it, and he gets moved to wide receiver. But I mean,
his swan song was only 5 touchdowns against Virginia in the Military Bowl.
He embraced it and has worked so hard and done a tremendous job. And today a depth chart came out that listed him as a starting wide receiver. So he is going to be a key player at wide receiver. But this brings into play the possibility of bringing Zach Abey over to quarterback in certain situations. I think the Navy coaching staff is committed to using him in short yardage situations, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, goal line situations, which is perfect. It's right up his alley as a big physical runner. And then you mentioned Evan Fachman. He would not be traveling to Hawaii if he was still a quarterback. He'd be about 5th or 6th on the depth chart at quarterback, even though he is talented. But he got moved to safety last spring, looked really good at safety early on, and they said, wow, this guy's a real hitter, a physical kid. So they bumped him up one level, and now he's playing that outside linebacker position known as striker, which is part defensive back, part linebacker, kind of a hybrid deal. And Evan is listed as the backup at striker, which is tremendous. Here's a guy who's playing quarterback last year on the scout team and is now going to be seeing time at striker.
Yeah, we'll see him playing Saturday night. Late night football, Mids 11 o'clock Eastern time on CBS Sports Network against Hawaii, who has a game under their belt. They hung on after taking a 30-point lead against Colorado State. They held on to beat the Rams this past week. Cole McDonald running the run and shoot for Hawaii. They were very impressive.
Cole McDonald.
On Saturday. Meanwhile, Maryland's offseason, look, by now you know the details of what has occurred at the University of Maryland. What's interesting, Bill, now is this is perhaps the best thing that could happen to the kids at the University of Maryland. They're finally going to get to play a game this week against Texas, a Texas team who I'm sure has had this game circled on their schedule after what happened to them in Austin a year ago. Yet the dynamics have changed. Sure, it's likely to be Kasim Hill at quarterback for Maryland. He was a star coming out of high school that Maryland was hoping would eventually take the reins. But it's Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator, who has not been at Maryland only a few months, that is actually in charge of the operation as the interim head coach right now. Completely unknown dynamic, I think, for Maryland coming up on Saturday. What on earth do they put on the field at FedEx Field against Texas?
It's anybody's guess, and I mean, it's just been the absolute worst type of preseason that you could have, because all the focus has been on the Jordan McNair death and subsequent follow-up. And I mean, every week something new is breaking about the whole situation. DJ Durkin, the head coach, is on a leave of absence. When he's going to come back, if he ever comes back, he could be fired. We do not know, as we tape this show, what his future is. I was thinking to myself, I've spent the entire month of August writing articles about football at Navy. Who's playing where, breaking down the slot back position, breaking down the outside linebacker position. I've been writing football stories, who's moving up, who's moving down. At Maryland, there has not been one story about football. Not one story. Right. I haven't read a story about the Maryland quarterback situation. Every article in the paper, both the Washington Post and the Baltimore Sun, and national outlets as well, is about the situation with the program. So a bizarre offseason, one that Maryland football probably hopes they never have to go through again. And yeah, you're right. How much have they really been able to focus on preparation? As you mentioned, an interim coach who has not even been with the program that long. So, we don't even know what kind of plan he's implementing. We don't know much about Matt Canada. He was offensive coordinator at some pretty big schools like LSU. So just, you hope for the players at Maryland that somehow they can put this behind them and move on and enjoy the season. But I don't have high hopes that this is going to be a great season for Maryland based on the cloud that is hanging over the program.
Well, and the fact that also you got to play Penn State, Michigan State, and Ohio State are all potentially top 10 programs. Top 10. We're not talking just top 25. We're talking about all four of them could win that division and compete for a playoff spot.
If Maryland had not had any of this happen, if Jordan McNair had not died, if DJ Durkin had not been put on suspension, Maryland would still be picked at the bottom of their division of the Big Ten, because they're just not there yet. They have not elevated to the point where they're ready to compete on a week-in, week-out basis against these types of teams. So add in all the turmoil, and it really is a tough situation.
Redskins and Ravens finished the preseason against each other. You won't see anybody that matters for the most part in those games. NFL allows these players to all stay on the roster. Cut downs come September 1st. They go from 90 to 53. Good luck trying to cut 37 players between now and then. It's been interesting to watch. Redskins, they really haven't had a whole lot going on outside of signing Adrian Peterson. The Ravens, on the other hand, interesting decision for John Harbaugh. Who's your backup quarterback? The young and inexperienced Lamar Jackson, or RG3, who has at least flashed in the preseason that he still looks like he can be at least a serviceable NFL quarterback.
Yeah, well, I think that everybody, including John Harbaugh, would tell you the ideal situation would be to keep all three. Robert Griffin is clearly more suited and more capable at this time in his career to be a credible backup quarterback than Lamar Jackson. But keeping three quarterbacks really hamstrings you. It's just not something the Ravens have ever done, particularly because Joe Flacco doesn't miss much time. Yeah. He doesn't miss games. And last year, he played injured pretty much the whole year. This year, he's healthy. So you're really looking at the fact that your backup quarterbacks stand on the sideline with a visor, with a headset standing in place. So it's a tough situation. In an ideal world, maybe you stuff Robert Griffin on a practice squad so that he's available if, God forbid, Joe Flacco goes down. But I think Robert Griffin has proven that he's a legit NFL quarterback, and if he gets cut, he's going to be picked up by somebody. And Lamar Jackson, he's not ready. That's the truth of the matter.
And the ironic thing is, RG3, because of time service, he wouldn't be eligible to get to the practice squad. And Lamar Jackson's not getting to the practice squad because if you subject him to waivers, somebody's going to claim him faster than you can put his name in. So
it really is a quandary.
It's really a quandary. But right now, if you look around that team, based on health and some other positions, safety took a little bit of a hit this past week.
Tight end, Hayden
Tight
Hurst
end.
getting injured. That means you're
You
going to have to carry.
don't know if you're going to be able to carry that extra quarterback. Plus, you're on the hook for the veteran minimum at worst for RG3 salary-wise. If you have him on the roster week 1, maybe it's a case of you release him going into week 1 or 2 there and then bring him back quite possibly down the line because you're not going to get Lamar Jackson through the waivers to the practice squad.
The good news is Joe Flacco has looked very good in preseason because in the end, he's the guy that's going to start a quarterback for the Ravens, and
Look, their wide receiver room is still the Bermuda Triangle of the NFL.
Well, they feel that they've upgraded that wide receiver room from last year, but time will tell.
I still see a lot of guys dropping passes.
One of the disappointings for the Washington Redskins, who I know you root for, Pete, Darius Geis was going to be a big-time running back in this league. And the fact that he suffered a torn ACL and is lost for the year was just devastating. Now, Adrian Peterson looked like he may have been able to recapture the magic.
Can he do it for 16 weeks is the question.
That's the question. But, I mean, it's really a shame what happened to Darius Geis because he looked like he could have been a difference maker and really helped this offense. Alex Smith, new starting quarterback, who are the weapons for the Washington Redskins?
Paul Richardson, Josh Doxson,
Chris Thompson,
Jamison Crowder, Trey Quinn, who we saw for SMU last year, is probably going to make the team as a wide receiver.
He could be a punt returner and start top
Cam
punt
Sims
returner.
out of Alabama. They've got some wide receivers there. I tell you right now, if Cam Sims somehow got cut trying to get him through the practice squad, I bet you the Ravens would claim him in 10 seconds as well. They love guys from Alabama.
That's right.
Love them. Ozzie Newsome in his final year with the Ravens there, a guy from Alabama. That's why they love all those Alabama guys. Redskins do too. Redskins, if you play for Alabama or Virginia Tech, you are home free.
Well, that's their starting defensive interior line is Alabama.
2 Alabama guys, that's right. And their backup, he's from Virginia Tech.
That's right.
That'll do it for us this week. Our thanks to Jason Clark from the AAYFA for stepping in and joining us in studio this week. And our thanks to you as always. Labor Day is next Monday. We'll be back in 2 weeks with the show. So come on back and join us as we say again, Happy New Year. For Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. Thanks for joining us on the Gridiron Review.